All right, perfect. So this is just a bit of an overview as to what we are going to be discussing tonight. Again, this is in plain sight, Stalking 101. So just a little bit about who we are, defining the key terms, talking about the severity of this issue, talking about some pop cultural references, warning signs of stalking, digital and cyber stalking, and then some bystander scenarios and safety planning. All right, so let's get started. If you have never heard of us or this is your first presentation by Hartley House, thank you so much for joining. Hartley House is located in Frederick, Maryland, and our mission is to end intimate partner violence, sexual assault, child abuse, and human trafficking, and to provide survivors with safety, shelter, and supportive services. So Hartley House is a nonprofit organization located in Frederick, Maryland, and it was created in 1979 after a local group of women recognized the need for emergency housing for women who are experiencing intimate partner violence. And since then, we've really expanded to become Frederick's only service provider for all victims and survivors of intimate partner violence, sexual assault, child abuse, and human trafficking. We still have our emergency shelter, but we also have a 24-hour hotline, crisis intervention appointments, counseling sessions, legal services, safe hospital accompaniment, an intervention program for perpetrators of violence, and education and prevention programs like the one tonight. So that's just a little bit about who we are and what we do. So this next question is interactive, and in your own words, I want us to think about, a key phrase, who a stalker is, what's a stalking behavior, what comes to mind when you think of the word stalking? And again, feel free to use the chat on Zoom as well.
It looks like somebody put in the chat, someone who is jealous and possessive.
Absolutely.
Planning their next move.
Planning the next move. Mm-hmm. Yeah, stalkers are very sophisticated in that. Thank you, Allison. A creepy person. I think stalkers could definitely be defined as creepy. Lack of privacy, constant monitoring, following, controlling, jealous, obsessed, wanting to scare a victim, an awkward person, following someone, dangerous. Yeah, these are all great words. And I think they kind of conjure up an image of, someone who is in need of power and control, which we like to show, the root of any type of abuse towards another person is rooted in power and control. And stalking is just one form of that. Tonight, we're going to be talking specifically about stalking within an intimate partner relationship. So whether it is a current intimate partner or a former intimate partner. And kind of going into that, I do want to make a distinction about the language that I'm using tonight, because, a common term is domestic violence, but we do want to try and use intimate partner violence as it is a bit more inclusive. And, these terms can still be used interchangeably, but DV is a bit more general, as it can occur between two people in their household, no matter what the relationship is, whereas intimate partner violence specifically happens between people who are in a current or former intimate relationship, no matter what their living situation is. I think domestic violence kind of conjures up like a woman being abused by her husband, and intimate partner violence can be a bit more inclusive to people who aren't living in the same household, people who aren't women, people who aren't men, people of any kind of demographic, really. So, intimate partner violence can happen even when people don't live together. And it can also happen between people who used to be together and now are not together. And, oftentimes the abuse like the stalking that we're going to be talking about tonight happens after the relationship has ended, and after that person has left the abusive relationship. So, sorry, my dog just opened my door. So we do often see, stalking as a main form of abuse after a person has left the abusive relationship. So with that being said, let's kind of dive into what is stalking. And this is just a general definition, just so that we're working from the same, mind frame here. So stalking is the purposeful following, watching, or harassment of another individual, and it typically occurs repeatedly and over an extended period of time. So does that make sense to everyone? Does that kind of correlate with what we were imagining in the previous slide when we all shared what our ideas were? Yes. All right. Okay, perfect. So now that we're all on the same, sphere with this, these are just a couple of examples of stalking behavior. Again, when we're talking about this, every situation is different, every experience is different, and abusers may use different tactics and methods to stalk their victims. These are just a few examples that are pretty common. So the first one is communicating persistently via phone, text, or social media. This is really common because of COVID. There's a lot of lack of in-person connection. So people really utilize technology in this harmful way to make sure that they know exactly the movements of someone else. The next one is sending unwelcome items or gifts. These can be, really anything that's just kind of off-putting if it's not something that you ask for. And, I don't mean like a nice surprise by like your boyfriend or, your partner or something. Like, it's lovely to receive flowers. That's a surprise. That's a welcome gift. But if you're like being gifted a poem that's kind of inappropriate that you didn't ask for, that's weird. It's a red flag. The next one is showing up repeatedly at someone's home, school, or workplace. So most of us have a very consistent schedule if we are working or in school. So people usually are in certain places most every day. And stalkers are really great at monitoring what your schedule is. So they know where you work, know where your home is at, where you go to school. And, they can also find that information out by following your phone or things like that. So they kind of have an idea as to where you are at certain times. And if then they show getting brave and like announcing themselves at these places, that's even more escalated behavior. So again, very, very dangerous sign of a stalking behavior. To kind of piggyback off of that, following someone, in person or via technology. So, there's a lot of programs that people can use to hack into someone's phone. They can put monitoring devices on or tracking devices on their cars. They can, hack into your home Wi-Fi. Like, there's just a lot of ways that people can really find out everything that there is to know about you, if they're smart and capable enough. Next one is intentionally damaging someone's property. This is a big behavior that we see in most forms of intimate partner violence, and stalking is no exception. In a stalking behavior, especially if it's after the person has left the relationship, there is a lack of security for the abuser because they've lost a lot of power and control because that person decided to leave. So a way that they can kind of, scare that person or try and threaten that person is through damaging their property. So, and then, they could take it one step further with that last bullet point by threatening someone or their friends or their families or their pets. So those last two especially are very common signs of escalation and escalating behaviors in an intimate partner violence relationship. Does anyone have any questions or any other thoughts about those? Okay, perfect. So this next slide is just a couple statistics that I think really show the severity of how real this is and how bad it can be. So I think, most portrayals of stalking in the media kind of present the stalker as like this stranger, like in the shadows wearing a trench coat, like someone who you don't know, someone who's just kind of hiding behind something, like that show You with the guy in the baseball cap. Like he just like stands behind trees and like doesn't know his victims. But in reality, like that's very not true. Of course, he continues to stalk his victims after he enters into a relationship with them, but usually people are stalked by people that they know. So let's kind of break this down. So 46% of stalking survivors experience one or more violent incidents by their stalker. So, stalking, unfortunately, is sometimes seen as not that serious because there's no like physical harm. But in reality, a lot of people are experiencing violence from their stalkers. The next one is 74% of stalking survivors were stalked by a former or intimate partner, and they reported violence and or coercive control during the relationship. So again, the majority of people who are experiencing stalking are experiencing it from someone who they were in a relationship with, who they probably loved and trusted, and now are experiencing this new type of violence and, or prolonged violence from their relationship. Last one is 57% of stalking survivors were stalked during the relationship. So, I also think that it's very easy for us to comprehend like being stalked after you leave someone, but in reality, that's not a new behavior. Most times it's already started either by, monitoring your technology or, having a tracking device on your phone or like in my friend's location or even just following you from place to place. Like it's not always a brand new behavior when someone leaves. So, I think it's also really important to remember that stalking is not like a gendered issue. It's not a heteronormative issue. Just like all types of abuse, anyone can be stalked, not just women, not just men, not just anyone. This can happen to literally anyone who has, it can happen to anyone. And this next slide, I think, is really, really important to share because stalking is not just like a one-off incident. It takes place over a long period of time. The average length of a stalking situation is approximately over 2 years. That is a long time. And I mean, I know people who have relatives who have been stalked for over 25 years. And, in that situation, they were incarcerated for a multitude of that, and then they were released and the violence escalated. So, this is not just like a one-off thing. It's not just like he found me at work, like, or they found me at work. That's not just like the one situation that happens. This is a pattern of behavior that happens over time, and it can be extremely, extremely devastating to survivors, and it can really shatter their whole world. So, stalking can be fatal. Research tells us that when stalking behaviors are present, the likelihood of homicide actually increases by a lot. And when there is any type of physical abuse present, the likelihood of homicide is even higher. So we see that in the statistics below. 76% of homicide victims have been stalked by their partner beforehand. That's a crazy number. That really is a crazy number. And then the next one, 89% of femicide victims, so female homicide victims, have been physically assaulted, who had been physically assaulted had also been stalked in the year before their murder. So we can really see in these numbers that stalking is a precursor to severe violence. And it's also an escalating behavior. So if someone is being stalked, it should be taken with the utmost concern and severity because these are people's lives. This can really be fatal to someone. So with all that being said, I feel like we kind of understand, this is a very severe issue. It needs to be taken seriously. But sometimes when we're watching, things in the media, they present it like it's romantic. A few things come to my mind. But I want y'all to take a second and just think about, and we'll put it on the next slide where you can type it in, but think of any examples of popular movies or TV shows where stalking was portrayed as like something really romantic and like kind of cute. But in reality, like if that happened in real life, it would be very unhealthy, very toxic, very creepy. So again, movie, TV show, book, even where something kind of felt like off. Yes, Twilight. Oh. Mm-hmm. And just a reminder, you can use the chat box if you are unable to log into Mentimeter. Ten Things I Hate About You. Yeah, yeah, that's actually, you know, I never thought about that one. It's a really good. Yeah, the whole trope of like hanging out with someone to get closer to their friends. The Notebook, the Ferris wheel scene. Oh, yeah, Noah's like hanging off the Ferris wheel and is like threatening to like jump or like fall off the Ferris wheel if Allie doesn't say that she'll go on a date with him. Like that whole movie is a little suspecty to me. I'll talk
Also
about
with the Notebook too. Just because it's on my mind, he also like builds a house for the main character, Allie, while they're not even dating. Like she's literally married or engaged
She's
to another
engaged. Yeah.
man. Yeah, so it's a lot. There's a lot there.
That whole movie, like it's presented like they're soulmates and they have to be together, or like, you know, it'll work out in the end. But it's just like if this was happening to someone in real life, like that's it's pretty messed up. It's a lot. It's a little too much. Um, so to kind of move this forward, I want to talk about this scene from the movie Love Actually. And I know a lot of people really love this movie, and especially, you know, we just had the holidays, like people love to watch this movie. Personally, it's not my favorite, but I think it has some scenes where things did not really age well because one, in the scene that I'm about to show you, this was a video that I think his name's Mark. I'm not entirely sure, but he like makes this whole film of Keira Knightley's character on her wedding day when she married someone else, and it's just about her. And then the whole scene with the signs, like everyone thinks it's so romantic, but it's just like he just came to her house without her knowing and told her that he loved her. Like, if someone did that in real life, that would be very weird and very creepy. So I'm not really sure like why everyone fawns over that scene so much, because it's just like this isn't realistic and this isn't like healthy. No one should have that much of an obsession about someone that they aren't with and, you know, will never be with because she married his best friend. But anyway, I digress. We'll watch this scene from Love Actually.
The bad granddad of rock and roll here at 10:30. Do not switch off.
An off you pie?
No, thanks.
Thank God. It would have broken my heart if you'd said yes.
Oh, right, well, lucky you.
Can I come in?
Yeah, well, I'm a bit busy,
Well,
but...
I was just passing and I thought we might check that video thing out. I thought I might be able to swap it for some pie or maybe Munchies?
Actually, I was being serious. I don't know where it is. I'll have a poke around tonight,
Mark.
then.
Can I say something?
Yeah?
I know you're Peter's best friend. And I know you've never particularly warmed to me. No, don't argue. We've never got friendly. But I just wanted to say I hope that can change. I'm nice. I really am, apart from my terrible taste in pie, and it would be great if we could be friends.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great.
Doesn't mean we'll be able to find the video, though. I had a real search when you first called and couldn't find any trace of it, so...
Well, there's one here that says Peter and Juliet's wedding. Do you think we might be on the right track?
Oh, yeah, well... Wow. That could be it.
Do you mind if I just...
No, I've probably taped over it. Almost everything has episodes of West Wing on it now. Oh.
Oh, bingo. That's lovely. Well done, you. Oh, that's gorgeous. Oh, thank you so much, Mark. This is exactly what I was hoping for. I look quite pretty. You've stayed rather close, haven't you? They're all of me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
But you never talk to me. You always talk to Peter. You don't like me.
I hope it's useful. Don't show it around too much. It needs a bit of editing. Look, I gotta get to a lunch. Early lunch. You can just show yourself out, can't you? It's a self-preservation thing, you see.
So I just kind of want to see what everyone's thoughts are. How do we feel after watching that? Yeah. Caroline, I agree. It's a wedding. She married someone else. You don't even see his face in the video. Not to mention the entire rest of the guests and bridal party and everyone. Very weird.
Okay, sorry. I know I put it on the chat, but I feel like I can also unmute myself. But I also feel like it was weird that in the background there was more like romantic music versus like creepy music, which makes you, as the watcher, believe that it's supposed to be romantic versus creepy. It kind of like sets the tone for you instead of you thinking like, no, that's really odd behavior.
Yeah, and like y'all said, Linda said that he was eating his cereal while watching it. I'm just like, it's odd, you know, like it's kind of like a fantasizing obsession. That's in and of itself like kind of weird. And I think in the movie that he was like the best friend of the groom. So like obviously he's not going to end up with her, but he still has this obsession with her that he documented on film. I mean, in and of itself, very weird. And yeah, really agreed about the music. Like, I think movies and media are really good at telling us how to feel in certain scenes. And so, like, a behavior like that, if they had changed the music, if they had maybe changed like how they shot the scene, it could have been much creepier looking and maybe made us uncomfortable to watch it. But you know, the music's very light and swoony, and you're supposed to feel certain emotions during it. And I think that can be really distracting and kind of make us reframe how we think about scenes because of, you know, they're telling us this is the way that it's supposed to go, this is the way it's supposed to feel, when in reality, you know, it's a wildly unhealthy behavior. And you know, I think it's very easy to write off that scene as like it's a big sign of affection, but I think there's also a very fine line with that, because if a surprise is unwanted, which I'm assuming it is because she's a married woman and not to him, you know, if that's uncomfortable or unwanted, like that's an unhealthy behavior at the end of the day, especially when it's someone who, you know, you're not even close with. That's not inherently a stranger, but like definitely someone that you don't like have a relationship with like that. Not to say that that always matters, but just murky waters. So, all right, awesome. So again, I think when we're watching movies, when we're watching TV shows, fight against the way that it is they're trying to make you feel, and just feel what you feel. And if something feels weird, it probably is. So while we might know how to be able to recognize after all of that, you know, what stalking behaviors are and that they're unhealthy and that they're dangerous, but it's also incredibly important to learn the warning signs, you know, before we kind of see it come to fruition. So the first example is contacting you constantly. I feel like a common thread with stalkers is that they need to know where you are and what you're always doing. And the easiest way for them to do that is, you know, especially when they're not around, is to check in constantly, whether it's phone call, FaceTime, text message, social media messages. You know, it makes it so easy with phones nowadays and all that kind of stuff to, you know, be able to check in no matter what time of day it is, no matter where they are. I mean, most places have service, so it's very easy for them. But if it's not a mutual thing, if it's not like an agreed upon, like wanted thing by both parties, that's a big red flag. I mean, I know a lot of people who like will check in with their partner every so often throughout the day, or maybe that's like a trend in their relationship, but it's usually something that both parties do and that they have agreed upon. But if you are getting 20 calls, 20 texts, 20, you know, Instagram messages about where you are and who you're with, that's very unhealthy. The next one is obtaining details before you provide them. Again, technology has made this very easy to do. You know, you can go on Facebook and be like, oh, you just had a baby, or oh, you just got married, or oh, you bought a dog, or oh, you went out to brunch with these people. So I think, like, you know, it's easy to kind of know a lot about people that you aren't consistently talking to, but an in-depth study on, your presence, where you live, what you do, all of those kinds of things, like maybe your mom's birthday, and like just too many details about your personal life regurgitated back to you by someone who maybe you don't know, or maybe you don't want to know anymore, is very unhealthy and very, very scary. And again, I think with that, it kind of lets us all take a step back as to, well, what does my online presence look like? Am I being safe online against people that I don't want to have this information about me? Are my privacy settings up to date? Am I sharing the location with someone who I don't want to have their location anymore? So I think this is also like a good reminder of like personal safety. Am I as safe online that I want to be? The next one is monitoring you excessively. So, asking about someone's day is totally normal, but inquiring countless times, like every 5 minutes, as to who you are with, what you're doing, what you're eating, why haven't you done this or why haven't you done that? That is a sign of extreme control. Because if you do that for long enough, if you weigh someone down with those constant questions and then there's consequences for not answering them, that is an extreme form of abuse. And even if it's not happening, by someone, or even if it's not like a romantic partner, if you're like constantly getting messages on Facebook from some person that you don't know and they're obsessively asking you questions, that can be a huge weight on someone, and it can cause a lot of anxiety and a lot of nervousness and paranoia. So that sign of extreme control can be really, really scary and should be taken very seriously. The next one is showing up unannounced. So set the scene. You're going out to brunch with your friend. You have agreed upon plans. It's just the two of you going. You're going to meet at this place at this time. Your partner shows up and is like, what are you doing here? I thought we had plans, when you explicitly did not have plans with that person. You have plans with your friend. Now your partner, you didn't tell your partner that you were going to go here. And even if you did, it doesn't matter. They're not supposed to be there. And then they get upset because you made plans without them. And maybe they ask you to not follow up with your plans or something like that. That can escalate very quickly and can put a lot of people in a dangerous situation. So, that's just one example of something, one, that person, how did they even find out where you were? Two, why did they feel comfortable showing up unannounced without an invitation? And three, how is it escalating, and how can people stay safe in that? So, if you start experiencing or notice someone in your life experiencing any of these things, like, unwanted visits, unnecessary amounts of communication, even inappropriate gifts, they may want to reassess either their current relationship or seek out resources and help for a former relationship. Again, this is all just examples. Everyone's situation is different. And it's also important to remember that it is a pattern of behavior that escalates over time, to a situation that is considered stalking. It's not just like a one-off thing. And maybe someone's partner is having a really bad day, or maybe they said something that they didn't mean. It doesn't necessarily mean that someone is being abused or stalked in that way, but it is good to look out for these signs, to notice these red flags. And it's really important to not diminish someone if they come to you and are afraid of this person. Provide them resources, talk to them, let them know that you're a safe person to talk to, because this is a very severe thing. So does anyone have any questions? All right. So we are now going to talk a little bit more in depth about digital or cyber stalking. So like we've mentioned a couple times, stalking is not often in person, and sometimes it is completely online. But often, you know, abusers who are stalking their current or former partner, it's kind of a simultaneous thing of stalking them in person and online. But with COVID, you know, a lot of things have changed, and abusers have found different methods to harass and abuse their victims. So, you know, this is maybe these statistics might grow and change in the next couple of years. So cyber stalking is really just the same thing, just on a digital platform. It's still that unwanted pursuit and harassment and, you know, unwanted communication and contact just via electronic means. So, you know, this is sending threatening messages via text or Facebook or Instagram or email. Maybe it's creating false accounts and using them to harass someone so that, you know, you can't ever block enough people. Or they could make a fake profile of that person that they're stalking to try and, you know, ruin their reputation online, or, you know, and it's something like that. I listened to a really interesting podcast about a man who virtually stalked people for over 20 years. I mean, this was multiple people, and he would basically ruin their reputation online if he didn't like how he was treated by them. And I mean, like, he would call people sex offenders. He would make people aligned with certain hate groups. Like, it was a lot. And he was just so angry, you know, by these people not wanting to be his partner or his friend, that he would completely ruin their lives. And I think that the most harmful thing about this form of stalking is that there's not always legislation that covers this type of violence, because, you know, it's not happening to a physical body. There's not always being threats being made. So it takes a long time for the government to create laws and create boundaries. Legislation to protect victims who are being harassed and abused this way. So this is just as severe and just as dangerous. And, you know, I used to work on our crisis hotline, and I remember talking to someone who, her spouse was hacking into their Alexa to listen in on her during the day and making sure that she was doing what she was supposed to be doing. You know, so that's just one example of people using technology in this really sophisticated, but very, very creepy and unhealthy way. So that's kind of the gist of digital cyber stalking. Again, this is a very complex issue, but are there any questions or concerns about what I've mentioned so far?
Not so much a question, but I just want to emphasize that I think, like, both the examples that you gave, the one about the Alexa and the one on the previous slide about an intimate partner showing up unannounced when they weren't supposed to be at that brunch with friends. I just think that really hones in on the fact that oftentimes this does happen by intimate partners or former intimate partners. So just keeping that in mind as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Caroline. Yeah. Again, I mean, I think it was like 74% of people being stalked were stalked by an intimate or former or current intimate partner. So it really is more than likely someone that is known to the survivor. So now that we've kind of gone through all the types and warning signs, I think it's really important to talk about how this affects survivors of stalking. When someone is victimized by this type of violence, it can be extremely traumatizing. You know, no survivor is the same, and everyone reacts differently to their situation because, you know, we're all different human beings. But, you know, here's just some examples of what someone who has been victimized by stalking might be experiencing. They might feel intense feelings of fear or anger, increased anger or irritability. They might have low levels of energy. They might have difficulties with decision making or concentration. They might withdraw from their friends, family, activities that they loved. They might have extreme changes in their sleeping and eating patterns. They might feel very depressed and lethargic. They might feel, you know, powerless in their situation. Because again, you know, there's a lot of instances of stalking where people can't always get the support that they deserve, because not always is there going to be consequences for that person's actions. Because, you know, like I said before, the digital and cyber stalking, there's still kind of a gap between legal action and the person experiencing it. So it's really important that, one, we understand the severity of this type of violence, but also the toll that it takes on the people who are experiencing it, so that we can best support them and be there for them in the way that is appropriate and the way that they want us to. So if you know someone who's been stalked or has experienced stalking, be sure to ask them how best you can be a help to them. Provide them resources if they're appropriate. At the end of this presentation, we'll have a list of different resources out there. And, you know, we are also available anytime to talk to them. I see a chat comment. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Rayleigh, thank you so much for bringing up this point. This is so important. So Rayleigh is talking about gaslighting and victims of stalking experiencing gaslighting because there's no proof. And I think, you know, this can absolutely go beyond stalking, but especially in this, because I think people have they can easily write off stalking because there's not always physical proof, like you were saying. And I think if you don't see it, you don't understand it. And, you know, someone's experience, you only know so much. So I think there's a lot of people who are probably saying, well, okay, so he texts you sometimes, like, that's not that big of a deal. But yeah, if you're receiving 200 texts a day from a number that you don't know, or from your ex-boyfriend, like, that's emotionally taxing, and that is incredibly difficult to live with. So I think, you know, it's really important that we take every situation of someone coming forward and talking about their experience, no matter what it is or how long ago it happened, and treating them with the respect that they deserve and believing them, because we don't know what their experience is. We don't know how it's affecting them. And, you know, the gaslighting can stop when people believe other people. So kind of going off of that, when you believe that someone is being stalked, or someone comes to you and tells you that they're being stalked, it can be really hard to know how to help them, you know, because it is a very powerless kind of situation. You know, it's hard to get law enforcement involved. It can be hard to have people believe you. But these are just some tips. So believing them, you know, is really the first step. Even if it seems like the stalker's behavior is something that you cannot even imagine, or it doesn't even seem scary to you, believe the survivor and what they're telling you. They are the experts in their situation, and they also have a very good gauge of what that stalker probably is capable of. You know, people have gut instincts for a reason, and we should all believe that. Help connect them to services if it is safe to do so. You know, if they have a phone that's being hacked into, it probably isn't the best idea to have them call a place like Hartley House on their phone. So help them work through options as to, oh, well, can you call off of my phone? Or maybe we can, you know, go somewhere outside of your house and turn off your location and then call. Something like that. And also ask them if they're interested in connecting to services. We at Hartley House, we work on the empowerment model. So we are always considering the needs of the survivor and meeting them where they're at. If they are not ready to connect with us, if they connect with us and then realize they're not ready, we encourage them to do what they feel comfortable with doing. We are never forcing anyone to get help. We are never forcing anyone to feel unsafe in their situation. Again, the survivor is the expert in their situation. They know what is best for themselves. And it's important that we all listen to that. Next one is helping them make a safety plan. Safety plans are kind of complex. So, you know, that's always something that we can talk with to a secondary survivor. So if this is a friend of yours or a family member and they don't feel comfortable calling, maybe you can call on their behalf or just talk to us yourself. And we are absolutely able to help with that. And maybe helping create that safety plan, working through these problems and coming up with ways to make that person feel safer. And this last one is, if you're witnessing someone who you think might be in a stalking situation, or someone comes up to you in the midst of being stalked or followed, we can follow the 5 Ds of bystander intervention. However, I do want to emphasize being a bystander only works if everyone stays safe. And it's always best to not intervene if you feel like it could escalate to a dangerous situation. So with that being said, if it is safe to do so for both yourself and all parties involved, there are the 5 Ds. So the first one is distract. So maybe getting their attention and helping get them somewhere safe, or just offering to help them get somewhere safe. Direct, maybe ask the person directly, like, hey, are you okay? Do you need help? The next one is delay. So maybe after the situation has subsided, like maybe you see that person go around another corner, maybe go up to the person who was being followed and be like, hey, are you okay? Do you need help? So kind of waiting until there's less risk there. The next one is document. If you witness something taking place, like maybe write down a description. I want to err on the side of caution with videos because different states have different rules, and you never want to do anything without the permission of the victim. So if you do happen to get on video, don't share it without that person's knowledge. But I would also say research your state laws before making that decision. And then lastly, delegate. So seek someone in a position of authority to help and work together to get that person to safety. So maybe that's like a restaurant owner or someone in a shop that you're passing by. Leaning on law enforcement might not be the safest option for everyone. So also like have that in mind as well. But remember, keeping everyone safe in the situation is of the utmost importance. It's okay to not intervene if you feel like it would make the situation escalated or more unsafe. Does anyone have any questions about that? All right. So now that we kind of have gone through all of this, here are some great safety planning tips and ideas. And like I said before, this is not an exhaustive list. If you are in a situation where either you are experiencing stalking or you know someone who is being stalked, we are absolutely able to help you come up with a safety plan on our hotline. The number on the bottom of the screen is available 24 hours a day to help you with that. So here are just some tips. Varying your routine. Like I said before, stalkers are really good at knowing exactly where you are at all times, even if it's without your knowledge. So varying our routine, maybe going to a different grocery store, or maybe going to the gym at a different time, or getting to work 15 minutes earlier or something like that, just so that, there's just a little bit of variety. They're not always ahead of the game there. Not traveling alone when it's possible. There's safety in numbers, always. Developing a code word. This can be used in a lot of different ways. I know people who have multiple code words with multiple people that mean multiple different things. So, if you have a code word for, I need you to call the police, or you can have a code word for, I'm getting some weird messages and I need you to come over, and just having those established with people that you trust. Staying in public areas when you're out, if you are alone, again, safety in numbers. Notifying people around you about the stalking. Again, these are people that you trust, and maybe, a person at your work that looks out for you, or maybe a neighbor that you get along with well, or maybe someone at your child's school, just in case someone weird shows up. I mean, most places with children are pretty good about that, but you never know. It's always helpful to have the most amount of people in your corner. Increasing home security. So, maybe investing in a Ring camera or those little sensors that beep every time a door or window is open, something like that. And then lastly, this is not a one-size-fits-all option, but if possible, making a police report and getting a protective order against a stalker, especially if they're a former intimate partner, that is something that Hartley House does help with, and we always can connect you through our legal services through our hotline. So these are just some tips. This is, again, not an exhaustive list, but just some things to keep in mind. So we like to say this really in every presentation. As people who are supporting survivors, there's just some really great things that we have to keep in mind. So one is being a safe place. Establish trust with that person. Make sure that they know that you're a safe person to come to. And remembering, this is their situation, allowing them the autonomy to do what they need to do for themselves, and encouraging them and empowering them to make their own decisions that fit their situation best. On the other hand, not on the other hand, but we also have to remember ourselves in these situations, because experiencing trauma and watching someone go through trauma can be really debilitating for everyone. So, we can't pour from an empty cup. We have to remember our own limitations, and it's okay to take time for yourself while you're supporting someone going through trauma. Next, we have to educate ourselves. So knowing our local resources, coming to events like these. This is a really great way to spread knowledge and awareness, and also, being able to help someone in the future. Learning some safety planning techniques, or having conversations with people who can help you learn more about safety planning techniques. And then knowing and establishing if and when to involve outside authorities. So if you're assisting someone who is going through a stalking situation, ask them, like, hey, if it comes down to it, like, would you feel comfortable with me involving the police in this? And respect their decision either way, because again, we don't know what someone else is going through entirely. Lastly, we got to try to be consistent and supportive, respecting our autonomy. People can make their own decisions based on what is best for their situation. And we really have to withhold our judgment in these situations. It's really easy to say, oh, well, I would have handled it this way, or, oh, you should have done this, it was so much easier. We can never know the full story. We have to trust that people are making the safe decisions with the options that they have, and we just got to support them through it. And the last one is offer unconditional support, but I like to add a little asterisk there. Offer unconditional support as you are able to. We have to remember our own limitations here, and it's really important that we take care of ourselves while caring for others. So now that we have all of this on our tool belt, and we have all of this knowledge and preparedness, let's put it to the test. So we have a couple scenarios, and I'll have a question on the next slide. So the first one, I'm so sorry, my dog is scratching behind me. The first scenario is your friend Shay just started. So sorry. Your friend Shay just started dating her new girlfriend, Rebecca. You and Shay go out to dinner, just the two of you. Suddenly, Rebecca shows up and seems incredibly upset. Rebecca asks Shay several questions: where she's been, why she didn't call, who she was with, and why she wasn't invited. So this might sound a little familiar. So with that in mind, what do you do? We can flip back to the last slide if anyone needs it. So again, you're out to brunch with your friend. Her new girlfriend shows up, is very upset, asks her a whole bunch of questions. How do you respond as the friend? Okay, so we have one answer. See how the conversation unfolds between the two of them and check in with their friend afterwards alone. Try to de-escalate the situation or follow up with my friend later and ask if she's okay and if this is a normal behavior. Yeah, both really good options. I like the idea of, kind of taking a step back, letting them figure out things and checking back in later. It keeps everyone safe. It doesn't really escalate the situation more than it already is. And I like the note of asking if this is a normal behavior, because context is everything in these situations. But I think it's also really important to know that this doesn't necessarily mean that this is an abusive relationship or that this is a stalking situation. It could just be that she thought she had different plans and was really upset because she felt like she was stood up. You never really know. But on the flip side, could have been very different. So I think context is everything, but also following up and making sure that Rebecca is okay and making sure that she feels supported by you is very important. All right, so we can move on to the next. Oh, discreetly give her Hartley-Housen's number or come up with a safe word to use if this is a normal behavior. Yeah, I really like the use of the code word there. And discreetly giving her Hartley-Housen's number, absolutely. If it is safe to do so, and maybe there's a way to finagle that, or writing it down on a takeout menu or something like that. All really good options. Great input, y'all. All right. So this next scenario is your friend Jack mentions to you offhandedly that his ex Mary keeps trying to message him on his Instagram. You ask if this has happened before. He replies that it's becoming more frequent and Mary is now sending threats. You try to block Mary, but she keeps finding ways to get to him. So again, this is an ex-girlfriend consistently messaging her ex-boyfriend on social media and is now escalating to threats. So how can we help Jack? Find out if he is interested in filing for a protective order and contact the police. Go from there depending on what he's comfortable with. Yeah, I love that. Especially asking what he's comfortable with and if that's something that he would be willing to do for himself. Because if it does escalate to threats, that is a severe sign that, violence could occur and there could be harm done. So I think that's a good option, as long as he is comfortable with it, like you said. Okay, so one says, see if he wants to delete his social media while he gets help or is connected to Hartley House. Yeah, I mean, that's always an option, just deleting the profile if that's something he feels comfortable with, because, if that's the only way that she's communicating with him, that might be the best way, at least temporarily, and connect him to Hartley House, absolutely. Or someone like us. Find out how secure his home is, like if he lives alone or if she has a key. If so, if he's changed the locks. Absolutely, very good questions. This is an ex-partner. She might know where he lives. She might have been to his house. They might have lived together. Making sure that he has precautions in place in case she decides to carry out those threats. Have Jack report his ex to social media. Yeah, that's always an option. especially when there's threats being made, and maybe contact the police. Absolutely. So again, asking Jack what he's comfortable with, giving him options, helping him walk through those options, and doing what feels comfortable to him. Absolutely. These are all great answers. All right. So one more. You have just started dating your new partner, Alex. It seems like things are going great and you two are having so much fun together. One day, Alex mentions to you that they saw you having lunch with your old high school friend, Mark. You did not mention these plans to Alex, and you've never told Alex about your friend, Mark, or how you and Mark know each other. So, Alex mentions to you that he saw you having lunch with your old friend. It is creepy, right? So what do you do going forward? Alex confronts you. Oh, I saw that you had lunch with Mark the other day. How does he know Mark's name? Well, weird. Find out how he knows all of that and then probably break up with him. I like it. I like it. Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, this could be innocent. He could have seen something on social media and found out the guy's name by maybe if there's like a photo posted or something. But again, still going the extra mile to be a little creepy. And also an invasion of privacy. Change my social media accounts to private if they aren't already. Look for tracking devices. Ask if he knows Mark. All good options. Just asking how he knows Mark and go from there. Absolutely. This could just be, oh, I used to go, play a sport with Mark, or I knew Mark from elementary school or something like that. Like it could be very innocent, but it also could be a warning sign that there's something more malicious happening there. So like I said before, context is really everything with these situations, but it's also important that we kind of have the foresight to look out for these red flags. If he doesn't know Mark, try to break it off in a way that is safe. Keep eyes out for more warning signs. Yeah, absolutely. Because breaking up with him might escalate his behavior. So, having that in the back of your mind of like how to stay safe afterwards. Because if he doesn't know Mark, like how did he know his name? Again, context is everything, but it's still weird. So thank you all so much for that input. That was really, really great. So to kind of wrap up tonight, we just wanted to provide some resources for you if you want to educate yourself further, or if you want to pass these on to someone who you know. On the left-hand side are the hotline resources. So Hartley House, again, we are for Frederick County, but there's also the National Domestic Violence Hotline and the hotline for RAIN. And then on the right-hand side of the screen are some great online resources for more education. The Spark agency is amazing. They have so much learning material on their website. A lot of the information tonight. Allison, no worries. Thanks so much for joining. But yeah, so these are just some great resources. If there's any questions or comments, we are happy to stay on for just a few minutes if you want to speak with us privately. But thank you all so much for coming. We're going to have our contact information up so that if you have any questions or concerns that you want to ask us later, here's our contact information. But other than that, thank you all so much for coming. Have a great rest of your night.